Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Beastmen, going to be taking on the High Elves. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army compositions. I've got Morgar the Shadowgrave here on foot, just with the two Chaos Spawn summons, supported by the Koroks Man-Rippers. Got a front line of Ungor Spearman Herd with shields. We've also got the Blackhorns Ravagers for some anti-infantry duty here. They've got, of course, perfect vigor and decent combat stats, being a regiment of renown. They also have stock, which is always nice. Over here, we've got 4 Centaurs with throwing axes, and hidden in the woods, we've got Gorbull, who I don't take too often. Against heavy cav factions, he's pretty good, though, as long as you don't expect him to get knocked around by big monsters too much. And then I've got 2 Centaurs with great weapons. One of them, of course, is the Sons of Goros, and a unit of Poisoned Warhounds. And it was at this point, after I had loaded into the battle, that I realized I had forgotten completely to bring a caster. So, yeah, that's definitely not optimal. But anyway, moving on to the High Elves here. Alariel up on her Eagle. Let's take a look at her loadout. She's got Earthblood and Banishment, as well as Arcane Unforging, Arcane Conduit, Stab of Avalorn, and Star of Avalorn. Front line of Spearmen, the Keepers of the Flame, Regiment of Renowned Phoenix Guard in the back. 2 units of Dragon Princes, one of them is the Fireborn, and 2 units of Illyrian Reavers, one of which is the Heralds of the Wind. So without further ado, let's get the battle rolling. Gonna get a bit of a skirmish phase going here. I'm gonna kind of maneuver around with my Centaurs a little bit and try and get some favorable angles. Obviously these Dragon Princes are hidden in the woods, so I can't currently see them. But yeah, we're just going to kind of have a bit of an extended skirmish phase here. We're even going to fast forward a little bit through this, as you can see Centaurs maneuvering around trying to dodge the volleys of those Illyrian Reavers anytime they unleash one in their direction. We also brought the Centaurs and Gorbull out of the woods over on the other side, since I'm fairly certain my opponent didn't have anything over here. We're going to go ahead and charge across and start to get a bit of a surround going here. Nice volley there from the Illyrian Reavers, actually doing some good damage and taking down a single Centaur. So far we've been able to mostly avoid taking too much damage. These 2 Centaurs obviously going to have to pull away from those Fireborn there, but getting in some good volleys, taking down 1 unit model it looks like already, so some pretty effective fire there. Meanwhile, the infantry line is going to be advancing across this open ground here and up the hill where our opponents are taking a defensive position. You can see, though, the Centaurs have got just about a full surround. We've got the throwing axes on both sides, and then the great weapons kind of taking up this flank here. My opponent's going to start to respond by trying to maneuver his spearmen into a blocking position and moving his own cavalry over to the other side of the formation. Looks like the Dragon Princes are thinking about maybe potentially charging into this front line here. We do have the Centaurs still on station, throwing axes there, getting some nice fire on those Heralds of the Wind. Looks like the Dragon Princes might be coming for a charge here, but then they do pull away at the last minute, not wanting to charge into those braced Ungor Spearman Herd. We've also got the Koroks Man-Rippers on station, so that probably wouldn't have been the best engagement for them. That being said, Illyrian Reavers trying to push away the Centaurs. I mean, obviously the Heralds of the Wind, especially with their really good melee stats, would absolutely trounce the Centaurs with throwing axes there. But as long as we can stay out in front, we can actually skirmish as they come into melee range. You can throw those axes, and it will do some pretty good damage, even though they're not necessarily meant to go against a lighter cavalry like that. Ungor Spearman Herd going to rush forward and fix these High Elf Spears in place. I love the animations of the High Elf Spearmen with their kind of defensive stance there. But yeah, all across the line, going to be a little bit of a wet noodle contest. Thankfully, the Ungor Spearman Herd with shields do have okay melee defense at 30, so the 23 attack of those Spearmen won't do too much. Lariel and the Phoenix coming down, though. Blackhorns Ravager is going to reinforce there, and Dragon Prince is also charging in, so potentially be pretty rough, but the Dragon Princes don't get the best charge there through the back of their own men. Meanwhile, over on this side, this unit of Ungor Spearman Herd gets smashed by the Regiment of Renowned Dragon Princes. You can see those Illyrian Reavers, as they were chasing my Centaurs off, did take quite a bit of damage, particularly these Heralds of the Wind, and they're now in a position where they're going to get caught by the Poison Hounds, and my Centaurs with great weapons just cresting the hill, also going to charge downhill and pretty much finish off these Heralds of the Wind here, which is a very nice get for me. Very expensive unit, well, relatively expensive, 1,000 points. And yeah, we pulled back the Centaurs with throwing axes over here. Going to be trying to pitch those axes into the Keepers of the Flame or these Dragon Princes, but it looks like they're actually mistargeting onto those Spearmen, unfortunately. And the other unit of Illyrian Reavers charging in, pinning this unit of Centaurs in place. You can see, though, we're maneuvering up and around to try and exploit this big gap in the back of my opponent's formation here. Chaos Spawn being summoned up, trying to pin in some of those Dragon Princes, but yeah, you can see a rear charge coming in from these Centaurs and the Hounds here. The Keepers of the Flame obviously will do quite well here, but Earthblood coming down from Alariel, and the Koroks Man-Ripper is also going to be following up here, kind of dragging down whatever models of Dragon Princes get caught out in the open here. We are going to pull away my own mobile force. Since we were taking the best end of that engagement, we want to try and kind of flow in and out, especially because my Centaurs have much higher speed than Dragon Princes, so we can pull away from that engagement pretty effectively. You can see the Koroks Man-Rippers now getting in here. They're going to tear apart these Spearmen pretty effectively. Meanwhile, these Spearmen definitely suffering to the Blackhorn's Ravagers, and the mobile force kind of regrouping here to try and come in for another timing push. Some good throwing axe fire coming down on those Dragon Princes and on the Keepers of the Flame there, so pretty good stuff. Alariel and her Phoenix are going to come down and try and pin down these Centaurs in melee, but this is a huge mistake because the Centaurs with great weapons are on station along with the Poison Hounds. They're all going to rush in and start doing attacks here, you know, poisoning Alariel and this Frostheart Phoenix and keeping them bogged down on the ground. And of course, Gorbel is on station, going to be running over as well. The Koroks Man-Rippers matched up against the Keepers of the Flame isn't going to be great for the Man-Rippers, so we are going to pull back from that engagement in just a moment. Of course, Koroks Man-Rippers do have 41 speed versus the 32 of the Keepers of the Flame, so they definitely can pull away there if they need to. Meanwhile, pulling back with the Centaurs with throwing axes, just getting back into a firing position. And meanwhile, the Centaurs with great weapons are tanking it out here. The Hounds had gone out and interrupted the charge of those Fireborn, which was very beneficial for me. And then Gorbel, you can see also mixing it up in the center here. His buff is actually going to be quite nice in buffing up all these Centaurs around him. And the other units, Dragon Prince is charging in here. But at this point, balance power definitely creeping in the Beastmen's favor. You can see the Koroks Man-Rippers were able to get away there. They're going to get surrounded by spears, but they have no problem fighting High Elf Spearmen. They can take this fight all day without too much issue with their high armor and melee defense. Meanwhile, over here, Blackhorn's Ravagers just finishing off those Spearmen, and they get turned into a spawn there by Morgur. So, yeah, we're going to be pushing that pocket forward in just a moment, as soon as I noticed that they had destroyed that unit of Spearmen. Centaurs with throwing axes pulling away there, coming in on a concerted charge to finish off this very tattered unit of Illyrian Reavers. And then we're doing another timing push to come in here and finish off the Fireborn as well. So you can see them just getting inundated by Centaurs from all sides. There's just way too many Centaurs for the Fireborn, who are relatively low in number at this point because they've lost quite a few unit models. They're going to get dragged down here. And the other unit of Dragon Princes tries to come down to spring them loose, but it's going to be too little too late. The Fireborn, I keep calling them Dragonborn. The Fireborn are offline at this point. Star of Avalorn trying to heal that last unit of Dragon Princes, and Alariel and the Phoenix also come over here to try and break up this pocket. But Gorbel's on station. He's going to charge straight in, get a nice somersault attack on Alariel there, and then start to use his axe to hew through Alariel and some of the cav there as well. So definitely beneficial for me. The Phoenix, though, will be able to do some good damage to Gorbel, but between the Chaos Spawns and the remaining, Centaurs and more, we are able to finish off these Dragon Princes pretty effectively. Nice rear charge from both sides for the Centaurs there, just finishing things off. Meanwhile, Keepers of the Flame matched up against the Blackhorn's Ravagers. They'll obviously beat the Blackhorn's Ravagers, but it's cost-effective for me to pin these guys in place and away from all of my large units who are fighting over in that other pocket. So, yeah, very beneficial. At this point, it's mostly just going to be grinding through the remaining units for the High Elves. So we're going to fast forward a little bit here. So you can see I am pitching some axes into the back of those Keepers of the Flame, trying to take them down. A very nice Overcast Banishment just levels a lot of units in this pocket here from Alariel. She's also going to drop another Earthblood there to try and keep the Phoenix and herself healing, but she's actually at her healing cap. You can see Gorbel's in here just kind of slapping her around a little bit. Maybe not. There we go. Gorbel gets in a good hit there. The Chaos Spawn falling to the Phoenix, and the Keepers of the Flame, the blue Phoenix guard, kind of the frosty Phoenix guard, if you will, they're going to get in here as well and start to drag down the last of the Sons of Goros. Gorbul's getting pretty low, but at this point I've got the infantry power to pretty much finish off these isolated Keepers of the Flame here. So we're going to come down with the Koroks Man Rippers and the remaining 2 Ungor Spearman herd. And Morgar, of course, since he doesn't count as a large target, he'll do okay here with his regeneration and everything. Going to come down, get a nice downhill charge, and finish off these Keepers of the Flame here. So we'll just soak up some cinematics of Morgar duking it out with this Phoenix here. Looks like Gorbul's coming around for another rear charge on the Phoenix. Gets a decent hit there, but yeah, Keepers of the Flame look a little bit ridiculous when they kind of blow up into fire, but Lariel had come back from routing. Now we're going to throw some axes and finish off her leadership there. So with her routing, it will just be a matter of time. She's actually potentially going to go down here. Only about 71 hit points left, but yeah, it's not much longer until these Keepers of the Flame and the Phoenix are done for. So we'll just continue to soak up a few cinematics. And yeah, I mean, you can win without a caster, like I showed here. I've won and lost battles without a caster, but you're always, always, always better off to have a caster to take advantage of the Winds of Magic, because, I mean, spells are just super powerful. They're incredibly powerful abilities, and considering that spell casters typically aren't super expensive, you know, certain spell casters at least, it's always cost effective to have some kind of spellcaster. So definitely, you know, sometimes you may forget, and there's no shame in that. Certainly I did here. Was still able to eke out a win, but it definitely would have been beneficial to have some type of lore of magic. So that there's the question then, what lore of magic would I have brought here? Probably Lore of Shadows, because the High Elves are kind of a heavy cav focused faction, at least against the Beastmen. We could also be potentially fighting a Star Dragon as well. Lore of Shadows is going to be very useful in helping to win both of those engagements, with Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma being very good against cavalry, and Enfeebling Foe, of course, against everything. So in terms of the breakdown there, though, Gorbul actually performed pretty well, and I might have to have another look at Gorbul. I haven't been using him too much because he just gets knocked around super easy, but it seems like he might be a bit better against heavy cavalry, so I might try him out against other heavy cavalry factions. Shetland had used the Gorbul very effectively against me in the Everchosen Invitational in our Beastmen versus Bretonnia match, which, by the way, I still am planning on casting those at some point. I'm just waiting on confirmation from CA that they're not going to put out any kind of compilation or highlight video or anything. I just want to wait just to let them, you know, take full advantage of the awesome tournament that they put on. Obviously, they're the ones who organized it and everything, so I want them to reap the full reward. So I'm going to hold off just a little bit longer on casting those, but rest assured, we are going to be casting them. Nevertheless, Gorbul did very well here. Would have liked to have had a Shadowcaster, but 139 kills too on the Koroks Man Rippers on a relatively low model count army for my opponent. Granted, a lot of those are just spearmen, but still 18 and 32 on the Centaurs, who are mostly focused on taking down heavy cavalry, so that's not bad at all. Centaurs with throwing axes also did quite well, one of them even in racking up an XP chevron. The kill totals aren't great, but again, they're fighting relatively low model count units. My opponent's army was pretty small, lots of elite units, so he just got swarmed a little bit there, and it ended up being pretty tough for him. Personally, I would probably cut the Keepers of the Flame to grab another unit of Dragon Princes, or else maybe just more Spearmen, maybe another couple Spearmen and another Illyrian Reaver, something like that. They're good. They definitely got some good kills. 131 kills, did pretty decently, but they're just so expensive for what you get, and especially in for a faction rather that really struggles with combating Swarm anyway. You know, taking a relatively small army like this can be very, very risky, and it didn't end up paying out for my opponent. But let's go ahead and quickly just have a discussion about Magic and the Beastmen specifically in this matchup. So if we go ahead and have a look here, Beastmen versus High Elves. So like I was saying, Lore of Shadows probably would have been the best pick here. Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma helps counter heavy cavalry. Enfeebling Foe is going to be good at countering elite units of all kinds, whether that be monsters, infantry, cavalry, heroes, whatever. So it's always useful against the High Elves. Likewise, Penumbral Pendulum, pretty good at clearing out infantry, especially if you overcast it. It can do some pretty decent armor-piercing damage, but in particular, Melkoth and Enfeebling Foe are the main reason why I would take Shadows in this matchup. You might also want to take Occam's Mindrazor just to buff up units that are fighting Dragon Princes or Phoenix Guard, both of which have physical resistance, so that that magic damage does help, and of course 40% weapon and armor piercing is always useful as well, so you may want to consider Occam's Mindrazor in this matchup as well. Alternately, Lore of Death can be okay. Fate of Bune is not as good as it used to be, but it still can be okay against elite infantry. Spirit Leech will actually kill a couple of cavalry unit models every time you cast it. I had noticed that. A couple of you guys had pointed it out, and I tested it, and it does indeed work. So Spirit Leech may be a good bring as well to help counter the heavy cavalry. Granted, you're going to have to spam it quite a bit, but if you do take down unit models, of course, they can't be healed, so there's that benefit as well. Lore of Wild, rather, is pretty decent if you want to summon a Cygor. On an open field map, can be very, very good. It has some other decent spells as well, particularly the lore attribute, the Vigor Refresh, can be very good in some matchups. If you ever expect a long, grindy matchup, I would definitely recommend taking Bestial Surge and then just spamming the cheaper spells like maybe Devolve, you know, Vile Tide. This Mantle of Garok is also a pretty decent buff too. 44 melee attack, 40% weapon and armor piercing at the cost of 30 armor. Since most Beastmen units are already low armor, it really doesn't matter too much, and that 44 melee attack and 40% weapon and AP is huge. So it can be potentially a very good support spell. But, yeah, they also have Lore of Beasts. I wouldn't really recommend Lore of Beasts against the High Elves, or against most factions in general, actually. Lore of Beasts is just kind of subpar for what you get. You can summon a Manticore, which is kind of neat, but not really useful. Curse of Onrahair is okay. Pan's Pelt is pretty decent. The Amber Spear, I'll have to test out a little bit more, but it may be useful, maybe not. Flock of Doom is okay, and Wissen's Wild Form is alright, but compared to some of the other Lords of Magic that you can bring, like Death or Shadows, Beast just really kind of loses its luster a little bit. But yeah, against the High Elves, my top pick would definitely have to be Lore of Shadows, for the reasons I already mentioned. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What kind of Lore of Magic would you take as a Beastman versus the High Elves? And yeah, I look forward to reading your comments. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.